Hey, Arlene, how are you? It's so good to talk to you on a Sunday.
Yes, thank you.
I was just telling your husband we had the most successful Noir City festival we've ever had in our 7th year, and a lot of that was due to your appearance. People were still buzzing about it a week later.
Oh, my, isn't that terrific? I'm so glad to hear that.
It was just fantastic, and you were fantastic, and it was just a great evening, and can't thank you enough for coming up there.
Well, it certainly boosted my morale.
Well, that's good.
And as a matter of fact, I've been hearing from people who were there, they got my address from the internet, I guess, and they've been writing me fan letters, the people who were there who didn't get their program signed.
Right. Well, that must make you feel real good.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrific. That's terrific. So, Reign of Terror, I thought we could start, if you didn't mind, by just asking you how you got the part of Madeline in the movie Reign of Terror.
I that is still a mystery. I was under contract to Metro. As a matter of fact, Reign of Terror was my 3rd film. My first was My Wild Irish Rose at Warner Brothers. And then I went to Metro and did the film with Van Johnson and June Allison, The Bride Goes Wild. And after I finished that, I got a call to come up to Mayor's office, L.B. Mayor, and he said, we have a film for you. It's not at our studio. It's Walter Wanger just called and wants you for his film Reign of Terror with Robert Cummings. And I said, really? He said, yes, and we'll send you a script. We're going to loan you out. I hadn't even read the script. He said, it's about the French Revolution, and you will play a French countess. So I think I had just turned 19 or 20, and I was going to play a French countess. And Mayor asked me, do you speak French? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I studied it in high school, and I can read it and write it and speak it a little bit. He said, well, what we'll do is we'll have you study with our dialogue coach and get you, so you know what you're saying. So that's how I found out about Reign of Terror. They had already said that they would loan me, apparently, to Walter Wanger.
Now, Eagle Lion was a small independent studio on Santa Monica Boulevard.
Yes.
And after you had been initially under contract to Warner's and then you went to Metro, did you initially wonder what you were getting into with this film of being kind of in the penthouse at Metro and going to Eagle Lion?
Not at all. I was anxious to meet Walter Wanger because he was presenting this film, and he was the one that called Mayor person to person and asked to borrow me. I don't know whether he'd seen me in My Wild Irish Rose or the one I did with Van Johnson or not. Probably My Wild Irish Rose, because the one with Van Johnson, I think, hadn't come out yet.
Wanger at that time still had a tremendous reputation as a producer. What contact did you have on him? Was he on the set often?
Oh, yes. Oh, he was there every day.
Mm-hmm.
And he was married to Joan Bennett, who was one of my personal favorite actresses.
Right.
And I just had one of my fans sent me a DVD on the film, Reign of Terror, and I can't believe that his name isn't on it, nor is Eagle Lion Studio. It's not mentioned at all either on the front or the back of the DVD.
I think that might have been the DVD that I gave Mark, and that's a pre-production DVD. I think, and it just has the basic film. And I think also the print has been remastered and reconstructed off of various different prints, because I think they called the film the Reign of... First it was the Black Book, then it was the Reign of Terror.
First it was the Reign of Terror, and then the Black Book.
Right, that's right. You're correct. So you're lent out for the film. What were your impressions upon meeting and working with Anthony Mann?
Well, he was the hot director at the time, because he just had many kudos for T-Man. He just directed T-Man, which was really a hot picture, and he became a hot director after that. So I didn't know, Mayer only told me, mentioned the name of Walter Wanger. He didn't mention Tony Mann.
Right.
So when I got on the set and met him, and also John Alton, who was a cinematographer, and John Alton knew Fernando Lamas, who I had just made a test for MGM with. So, and he was from the Argentine. So I knew that he gave me a book called Painting with Light, which had just come out, and so I knew that Walter Wanger always got the best people, not only the cast, which reads like a who's who, but also William Cameron Menzies did the sets, and he produced it as well, and the screenplay was by Philip Jordan, who was very hot at the time, too. So he had tremendous people working on this. I was really honored to be part of the cast.
I think you're absolutely right about the cast being a who's who. When you go through it, some very impressive names and people who did a lot in Hollywood. Going back to Tony Mann for a minute, how did he work with you as a director? How did he direct you as a young actress?
Well, he was the first director. I had worked with two other directors who were they were ushers, really. They were the kind of directors that you call an usher. This way, Miss Dahl, stand on your mark here. Or this way, Miss Dahl. Tony Mann took me aside and said, we're going to talk about Madeline as a character. And he was the only director besides Kenneth Hughes, who I directed, who I worked with as a director in London, to do that with me. And I was very impressed with that. And I expected it from then on by every director, but as I say, until I went to London, I didn't find anyone that did that. But he told me about the story and how I fit into it and what he wanted and so on. It was terrific. It's not just, as an actress, learning lines. It's just you have to learn what the character stands for and how it fits into the picture and so on. So he was terrific.
How closely did he and Alton work together? Did you have a chance to observe them? I'm sure you did on the set. How did they work together?
Well, they were talking all the time behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. So I know that John Alton knew exactly what he wanted to do with it, and the close-up. John Alton is known for his close-ups, and and I'm very happy about that, because my close-ups were very beautifully done. As a matter of fact, he taught me what an eye light was to make the eyes sparkle in close-ups, and without having to look directly into the light, So I learned a lot about lighting from John Alton.
You had mentioned the name William Cameron Menzies,
yes.
And he was the one that really invented production design. My understanding for Reign of Terror was Wanger did the casting and approved the script, but the working production was basically handed off to Menzies.
Absolutely.
Because Wanger was tied up on Joan of Arc at the time. Mm-hmm. Was Menzies a active participant with Anthony Mann, and you saw him on the set?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, Wanger was asking for more money than Eagle Lion I was able to give him for the film, to make the film. Mm-hmm. So he and William Cameron Menzies thought of a way to save money on the sets while still making them lush and Menzies, instead of coming into a room with 4 walls, we came into a room with just 2 walls and shot against those 2 walls. I mean, it was just enormously instructive to me how you can save money by, with creative people.
Right, exactly. Where was the picture filmed?
In Hollywood, in the studio.
I know there were some scenes where there was that horse chase out in the country and all of that.
Yes, we went to I forget what it's called, but it was usually westerns were made at this particular place. Calabasas,
right, out in the valley, or
Camarillo, or Calabasas, probably Calabasas.
Right. Did you, in some of those scenes, it looked like you were on the horse. Did you know how to ride a horse before Reign of Terror?
I learned how to ride a horse when I was thrown from one on my first film. I almost didn't complete the film because I was thrown from the horse. I had 6 weeks of learning how to ride a horse for the first film I made at Warner Brothers, My Wild Irish Rose. And the opening scene was, I was thrown from a horse. They kept it in. I actually was thrown from a horse. And he dragged me 100 feet.
You wanted to get up and look at the horse and say, quit ad-libbing.
Well, I was happy that Robert Cummings, who was a horseback rider from way back, was there to help me with the fine points.
Right.
But, of course, I had a stunt person do the fast riding.
Sure. Many of your scenes in Reign of Terror were with Robert Cummings.
Mm-hmm.
Did you like working with him, and was he helpful to you as an actor?
Oh, yes, he was terrific. He was a friend that I had met. He and his wife, Mary, I had met socially before I knew I was going to do this film, and before he knew I was going to do it. So we were friendly.
How was he as a kisser?
He had very soft lips. That's what I remember.
Very soft.
But
Okay.
Mary was on the set most of the time. So in spite of having 5 children, she had 2 nannies, as I remember. Made a very big impression on me coming from Minneapolis and Minnesota, where a nanny is something that we didn't have much of in Minnesota. So she had 2 of them. She had 6 children, so I could imagine she needed extra help. But she was on the set all the time, so I had to watch. We had to watch our kisses. That they didn't. Not that she would time them, but we had to be natural about it. But we didn't linger too long on the kisses.
Yeah, in other words, you couldn't kiss Bob Cummings in the same way that you kissed Fernando Lamas in that scene that we showed up in San Francisco.
You got it.
I got it. Okay. A little bit more about the cast. Richard Basehart was certainly a great actor and played a diabolical Robespierre.
Oh, he was one of the most underrated actors of his time. He could play a leading man as well as a character actor. He could do anything. And he was seeing Valentina Cortesa, who was in my art class. She and Lou Ayres and Jane Wyman, we all took art lessons. A portrait artist who used to do the portrait arts for all the screen legends that were painted for a photograph for a portrait over a fireplace to hang over a fireplace, and so we would take art lessons, and we would take turns posing, for the different members of the class. And Valentina posed 2 days running, and I was doing a portrait of her. Then she left for Italy, and right after, I think Richard Basehart finished Reign of Terror, he went after her, and I think he came back for 1 or 2 other films, but he ended up moving to Rome and marrying Valentina. So there was a great romance going on there.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. And how long did the shoot take? Do you remember how long you were on Reign of Terror?
Well,
I know this was a long time ago.
It wasn't as long as it took to photograph in color, in Technicolor, My Wild Irish Rose. Usually musicals take about 2 or 3 months longer than black and white films with just the book, not the music. So I think it was done in about two months, because remember that Walter Wanger was under strict budget for Eagle Lion.
Right.
And so we had very few retakes. I don't remember that we did any retakes of our scenes together, my scenes with Robert.
Right. there were so many great character actors in this movie.
Besides Richard Basehart, there was Richard Hart, who died much too early. He was being touted as the new hot leading man, but he died about 2 or 3 years later. I mean, it was just such a shock to all of us. And then there was Arnold Moss, that was a fantastic actor, and Norman Lloyd, they both were in played character parts in some of the films I made at Metro before I left.
Arnold Moss seemed to get most of the great throwaway lines, and some of it was rather funny, almost as if he was ad-libbing, where I think at one point he tells you and Robert Cummings, now don't stay out too late, there's a revolution on,
right? And
all of these little bon mots. He really had a good part and handled it well.
Yes, well, Philip Yordan had a great sense of humor. I knew his wife very well, and I had met him. He came to the set. He spent most of his time in Europe, though, but he did come to the set briefly with his wife, whom I had known because we had the same hairdresser at Saks, and she used to, I started reading tea leaves one day, and she wanted me to read her her tea leaves with Nancy Reagan and Sid Charisse. We were all under the drawers together, and we had a great tea leaf reading session. But Philip Yordan was was a very important screenwriter and worked all the time. And I remember his wife used to spend most of his money shopping at Saks or in Europe or wherever. She would tell us all the fabulous gowns she would get and what she had to pay for them.
Norman Lloyd, God bless him, is still with us.
Isn't that terrific?
I recently saw him in a California Artist Radio Theater doing a Shaw play.
Really?
About 3 months ago with Samantha Agar, Village Wooing, and he's terrific. Did you know Norman before Reign of Terror?
No,
and
I knew none of the character actors before Reign of Terror, except for Jess Barker, because he was constantly telling me on the film that he was always getting Lex Barker's mail. And he was married to Susan Hayward, who came on the set every once in a while because she was ready to start another picture for Walter Wanger. And she was another redhead. So he teased me about, if I have any trouble with Susan, I know where to find another redhead.
Yeah, well, that's right. Wanger had her under contract at that time. And I think... Didn't Jess Barker and Susan Hayward had twins and ended up getting into a very messy custody battle when they got divorced? Yes, that was
much later, though.
Yes, right.
They were still happily married when we made this film. And Beulah Bondi was just terrific. What a fabulous actress.
She was great. She was terrific. What about Charles McGraw? Did he apologize after he ripped your dress before branding you with a red-hot iron?
No, he was one of the few people who stayed in character throughout the whole thing. I was afraid of him, actually. He was so gruff, and he always wore that heavy brush on his face, the heavy beard.
The beard, the 2 weeks growth.
No, I was afraid of him.
God. Well, I'll send you my book about him. Maybe you'll be less afraid when you read about him.
Now, you didn't mention the costumes, but I thought the wardrobe was so fantastic, and I don't remember the young man's name, but I do remember those costumes were some of the most beautiful costumes I've ever had, and Edith Head did most of my costumes at Paramount, if not all of them. So he rated very well in my book as a designer.
Yeah, I was just trying to look up the costume. J.A. Morley Jr.
Oh, that's it.
Yes, it says.
I think he was just out of a design school or something. Anyway, the costumes were just so fantastic, and they were executed so well too.
Yeah, the attention to detail on the period detail was really, really phenomenal.
Exactly.
So, in looking back, what do you think Reign of Terror did for your career? And
well, I'll tell you what Walter Wanger did for my career.
Please do.
Besides casting me as the Countess, he ran a contest. I have a beauty mark right next to my lips, and at Warner Brothers, and some of the photographs that I had taken at Metro in the gallery, they erased it because they thought it looked like a fly speck or something. Walter Wanger said, "This is what makes you different. We're going to have a contest. Whoever has a beauty spot in the same position as yours, we will bring to Hollywood so they can meet you and to be on the set and so on." So he had a nationwide contest called Arlene Dahl's Beauty Spot or Beauty Mark, one or the other. And as a result of this, I got fan mail from all over the country with just the lips and the beauty spot, Hollywood, California. This is what Walter Wanger did for me.
Wow. He really knew how to promote.
He was the best merchandiser, the best promoter, the best producer I've ever worked with.
Wow, that's impressive. And so looking back on everything that the people that you dealt with on the film, Anthony Mann, Alton, Walter Wanger.
They were all A+.
They were all A+,
Absolutely.
and I imagine you took some lessons on filmmaking and all of that, and that kind of helped you develop further in your career. Is that true?
No question about it. Tony Mann set up a high level for directors that I worked with after that, and very few of them met it, the high level that he gave me on that. William Cameron Menzies' sets and the young man's costumes were very, very beautiful and high level. I mean, the best. I worked with the best. And Tony Mann and John Alton and Walter Wanger, this was the best that you would expect from MGM, not Eagle Lion,
So when L.B. Mayer told you were getting lent out, at the end of it, the whole thing was just a wonderful experience.
Absolutely,
for you.
And he called me into his office. I remember after I came back to the studio, after finishing up the film, he said, "Well, how did it go?" And I said, "I think, Mr. Mayer, you have a lot to accomplish in getting a cast and a crew and a director, producer, cameraman that can top these people that I worked with." He said, "Yeah, it was a good experience." And I said, "It certainly was." He said, "Well, I tell you," and he was the one that gave me my fan mail with the lips and the beauty spot. He said, "Whose idea was this?" And I said, "It was Walter Wanger's idea." And he said, "Well, we'll capitalize on it. Thank him for me."
And interestingly, Anthony Mann and John Alton shortly ended up working at MGM.
I know.
Right after that.
I think that after this, Walter Wanger screened the film for L.B. Mayer and his group, and they were very taken with what they saw on the screen. So, of course, John Alton worked at MGM and won the Academy Award for his cinematography in
that's American in Paris.
American in Paris.
Right. And my understanding is that Dory Sherry, who I guess took over as production head around 49 and 50.
51, exactly.
Yeah. He also got taken with Mann and Alton, and ended up Eagle Lion was making another film directed by Tony Mann and shot by Alton called Border Incident, and
right.
MGM bought not only the property, but they put Mann and Alton under contract.
Is that right?
And launched them on their careers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
that started a lot of things, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And
for a lot of people.
That's right, and you might have been the one who planted the seed with L.B. Mayer for Mann and Alton to end up there.
Well, I hope so.
Which is kind of neat.
You're telling me something I didn't know, and I'm telling you something you probably didn't know. So
that's right.
Put two and two together and get 5.
So, Arlene, is there anything else from Reign of Terror that you'd like to share with me this morning, or anything?
Well, it was one of the best experiences I've had in shooting film in Hollywood, and I'm very grateful to Walter Wanger and for Robert, and most of them have left this world. So I can't thank them in person, but perhaps I can thank them in writing one day. And I'm working on doing an autobiography, and that's certainly going to figure very highly on my film scale.
Well, I'll tell you, we will all be anxiously waiting for your autobiography, because knowing you will be very tasteful, but you won't pull any punches either.
Oh, no.
So I look
I
forward
believe
to
in
that.
The truth, and because it always makes a better story.
That's right. Truth is more interesting than fiction.
Absolutely.
And I think when our conversation, however, gets edited, but when it gets on the DVD, I'll try to make sure that your thank you to Messrs. Mann, Alton, and Wanger gets on that DVD, so people will be able to hear it.
Oh, please do. I would be very grateful if you did that.
Absolutely. Well, with that, unless there's anything else, I just want to thank you for taking time out of your Sunday to do this. I'm very, very appreciative.
Well, I'm very happy that I had the time. And,
absolutely.
This is one of my favorite films, so thank you for asking me to contribute to it.
Absolutely, and give my best to Mark.
I will.
And I will put a copy of my book in the mail to you next week, so you can learn that Charles McGraw was not the frightening person he convinced you he was.
I was really afraid of him, as I remember.
Okay.
Great talking with you.
Thank you so much, Arlene. Great talking to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.